Willpower, or Your Dynamic Forces, by William Walker Atkinson. Read by Max Myers, June 2023. This work is in the public domain. Chapters 4 through 6. Chapter 4, Deliberative Will. You are now asked to consider the phase of willpower known as stage of deliberative will. Deliberation is defined as the act of deliberating or weighing in the mind. In the stage of deliberation, you weigh with more or less care the general or special alternative courses of action presenting themselves to the will. Each of the alternative courses possesses certain points of attraction and also certain points of repulsion. The attractive points arise from the promise of emotional satisfaction and content. The points of repulsion arise from the threat of emotional dissatisfaction and discontent. These opposing points are to be balanced one against the other, to the end that the stage of determination and the resulting stage of voluntary action may be reached, and the processes of will thereby completed. You probably have been accustomed to regard the process of deliberation as one concerned solely with intellectual activity. You probably have imagined that when you deliberate concerning alternative courses of action, you approach the matter in the spirit of cold reasoning, and that your decision is made wholly from the standpoint of logical judgment. But, as a matter of fact, the part played by your intellect and reason in the deliberation concerning actions and in the judgments resulting from this usually is merely the part of the searcher after facts relating to 1. The direction and means whereby the greatest emotional satisfaction and content may be secured, and 2. The probable results of the action along the lines of either of the two alternative courses, the said results always being measured by their probable effect upon your state of emotional satisfaction and content. In short, your reason is employed to search the records of experience in order to discover and uncover the associations and relations of each of the two alternative courses of action, to the end that you may have the fullest possible information concerning the probable ultimate emotional value of each action, and also to discover and recommend to the will the most effective methods whereby you may apply either of the alternative courses of action, if such be accepted. It is true that in the cases of persons of trained intellectual powers, of wide experience, well-stocked memory, and active constructive imagination, the intellectual faculties play a far more important part in the processes of deliberation and decision than in the cases in which these processes are performed by persons lacking those mental qualifications and this extended experience. Reason performs valuable services in the direction of holding up to the will the probable results of given alternative courses of action, that the will may more clearly determine the actual emotional value of those courses. It also renders valuable service to the will in the matter of discovering, uncovering, inventing, and creating methods whereby the good of the will may best be realized and expressed. In this, and in similar ways, it provides the will with positive and negative motives for choice and action, and thus throws additional weight into the alternative courses upon which deliberation is being had. Reason serves will in this way by placing its forces of memory, imagination, and association of ideas at the disposal of will. It also aids will in the direction of furnishing it with the fullest possible information concerning the alternative courses of action under consideration, by telling it all about them to the best of its ability. This is of the greatest value in the process of deliberation, and very often determines the decision. A course of action clearly and definitely known has a very great advantage as a candidate for will action over one not so known. Reason proceeds to aid will in this way with a machine-like coldness, provided that emotion be kept from interfering with the work. Reason is very cold-blooded and tends to proceed with the appalling inexorableness of a machine. It is unfeeling and unmoral. It proceeds logically from premise to conclusion without regard to emotional or moral values. But at the last, reason acting as an aid to will always is found to be operating merely in the direction of discovering facts concerning the probable emotional value of courses of action under consideration, or else to be planning and deciding upon the most effective methods of expressing and manifesting those desires or ideas and ideals connected with desires, which have been accepted by the will as containing the promise of emotional value. In short, reason in such cases is concerned merely with the task of uncovering or in directing the effective expression of certain courses of action possessing emotional value. This emotional value is always determined by the greater degree of promised emotional satisfaction and content, or the least degree of threatened emotional dissatisfaction and discontent. You should note here, however, the following distinction. The emotional element is directly involved only in deliberation and decision concerning the advisability of performing certain actions or courses of action. It is involved in this way in all questions of to do or not to do, and to all questions of which of these two courses of action shall I choose. It is not involved in this way in cases of purely intellectual effort or processes of logical reasoning, as for instance, in the working out of problems of formal logic or mathematics. Neither is it directly involved in cases in which reason is called upon to decide and determine which of certain ideas, plans, methods, or courses of procedure will best serve to accomplish certain definite ends and aims. In cases of the latter class, the deliberation and decision concerning the advisability of undertaking certain tasks or courses of action have been previously performed along the lines of comparative emotional value, and all that now remains to be deliberated and decided is how best to carry out and execute the designs already adopted, and in what way may best be accomplished the ends already accepted as being emotionally advantageous. The rule, however, applies invariably to all cases in which you experience the conflicting pulls or pushes of I want to do this in one way, while in another way I do not want to do it. Or in cases in which you say to yourself, this seems to be what I want, or to lead to what I want, but I fear that it may bring about complications or related results which I do not want. Or where you say to yourself, I want to do this and I want to do that, but I do not know which I want to do more than the other. In such cases, the conflict really is a desire conflict or an emotional conflict, and not a direct intellectual conflict at all. You may feel inclined to resent this statement, and probably may even indignantly deny its truth. Many persons feel this way when first this fact is presented to them, for most of us like to think that we decide every question of conduct and action from the standpoint of pure logic and called reason, but we do not do so at all in cases such we have just mentioned. If you cannot see the truth of this statement and are inclined to dispute it, You would do well to submit it to the following test of your own reason and experience, and settle it once and for all. For unless it is settled in your mind, you may not be able to enter fully into the spirit of certain points of your instruction, which are based upon this particular psychological principle. Here is the test of reason and experience. Apply it to yourself honestly and in the scientific spirit, and answer it in the same way. Ask yourself the following questions. What are the true reasons governing my decisions concerning alternative courses of action and conduct, or of refraining from any certain action or course of conduct in which the element of feeling, emotion, affection, or desire is involved? Do I or do I not consider and decide the question of shall I or shall I not, or which shall I do or choose, from the standpoint and with the motive of securing the greatest emotional satisfaction and content, or the least emotional dissatisfaction and discontent, the greatest pleasure or the least pain? In answering these questions, you should bear in mind that the pleasure and pain may be immediate and remote, and may be concerned directly with your own personal experience, or that of others in whom you are interested, or to whom you are connected by the bonds of sympathy or affection. All of these forms of emotional satisfaction and content, or emotional dissatisfaction and discontent, come under the general rule. A careful self-analysis and a frank, honest report based thereupon is certain to bring you the conviction that your deliberations and decisions in cases of this kind concerning your actions or courses of conduct invariably are conducted and made upon this basis of the greatest emotional value. The reasons for your actions and courses of conduct are never divorced from your feelings, affections, and desires. In fact, in the absence of feeling, affection, and desire, there could not and would not be any reasons at all for your actions or courses of conduct. The only reason, the only cause, and because of your actions, or of your choice of actions, or of your acting at all, is the reason, the cause, and the because, arising from the promise of emotional satisfaction and content, or the threat of the opposite results, the probable emotional value, in short, passed upon to some extent by reason. Sometimes it is difficult to trace back the path to the determining feeling, affection, or desire of an action or course of conduct, so remote or so complex, such may be at times. But the influence of the feeling, the affection, or the desire is always there, animating and inspiring the action or course of conduct. For otherwise there would and could be no reason, cause, or because at all for your conduct or action, and consequently no answer to the question why, asked concerning such action or conduct. In this connection, you should remember that we include habit, resulting from antecedent actions based upon emotional content, among the emotional motives. You know that it is more comfortable to act according to habit than contrary thereto, and comfortable implies feeling and desire. Before cognitive will is transformed into active will, there must occur a greater or less degree of mental activity in the stage of deliberation. Cognitive will becomes transformed into active will only in response to some idea or object calling it forth into expression and manifestation. There are usually several alternative ideas or objects presented to the will for decision and choice, or at least there is the alternative of to do or not to do. Here, deliberative will, assisted by intellect, weighs and appraises these conflicting alternatives. The process of deliberation may be extended over a considerable period of time, or else it may be almost instantaneous, but it is always performed. Pleasure and pain, agreeable or disagreeable mental states, are the precedents to all definite activities of will. Action is found always to proceed toward the most agreeable and away from the most disagreeable mental state. The will is always interested, never disinterested in its actions. It always moves to gain some end, to acquire something which to it seems good. Life is largely a matter of securing the agreeable and escaping the disagreeable. But it must not be forgotten that by the shifting of the mental point of view, our emotional feelings often change from the agreeable to the disagreeable, and vice versa. Sometimes there is a violent shifting from one pole to the other of our emotional nature. Such changes arise from the discovery of new attributes in the objects and ideas presenting themselves for deliberation, decision, and determination. Thus, while feeling, affection, and desire are the motives for all will actions, the other mental faculties play an important part by presenting to them the ideas and mental images which tend to influence and direct the emotional faculties, and thus have an important influence on will itself. Finding your definite purposes. We shall now illustrate to you the process of deliberative will by an appeal to your own personal experience. While doing this, you will also be obtaining some practical exercise along the lines of efficient deliberative will work and activity. In the following illustrations and examples, the particular principles under consideration will be brought out, and at the same time, you will take several important steps in the direction of actual practice and training of your willpower. Instead of illustrating the principles in question by introducing abstract and impersonal examples or instances, we shall employ illustrations and examples from your own personal experiences so that in examining these illustrative examples, you will at the same time be actually exercising the mental faculties which furnish them. Begin by asking yourself the following question. For what purpose do I wish to develop and train my willpower and to manifest it in action? In what direction do I wish to apply and employ it when I have acquired it? What is the chief end which I seek to accomplish and to attain through the possession and manifestation of developed and trained willpower? Upon your answers to these questions must depend the character of the special instruction and information to be obtained by you from the study of this book. Think well over these questions, ponder them carefully, and answer them fully, frankly, and honestly to yourself. You will do well to commit your answers to writing for future reference. To think with pencil and paper is a very helpful method and one advised in this course of instruction. The following suggestions and advice should materially aid you in this task of discovering and uncovering your definite purposes toward the attainment and achievement of which you seek to develop and train your willpower. If you are like most persons who undertake this task of determination of their definite purposes, which they seek to attain and achieve by means of their willpower, you will find yourself perplexed to furnish the correct answers to the questions just propounded to you, and which you are expected to answer as fully as possible. You, like many others, probably have not as yet found yourself in this important matter. That is to say, you have not as yet discovered and uncovered your definite purposes in life. If this be so, then this instruction has reached you at the right time, because until you discover and uncover your definite purposes, you cannot expect to employ efficiently even that degree of willpower which you have already developed, not to speak of that additional degree which you hope to attain. Most persons in this stage, and this probably includes yourself, find themselves filled with merely a vague and general, though perhaps quite strong inclination and tendency to push forward into action. thereby to attain and achieve that which will be good to them and for them. They feel the general outward pressure of conative will, but they do not as yet know in just what direction to exert that inner power. This condition is all right so far as it goes, but it does not go far enough. The sense of willpower is there, but willpower without definite purpose is inefficient and useless. There is needed here a strong, definite, positive, purposive direction for the conative will. We shall now present to you the methods whereby this needed element may be supplied. Dominant desires. In the first place, you should discover your dominant desires, i.e., the strongest and most insistent desires which abide within your mental and emotional being. It is no easy matter to discover and uncover your dominant desires without some instruction concerning the process. You will find that your mental and emotional being is filled with a multitude of desires, great and strong, transient and permanent, many of which oppose and interfere with others. There is required of you a determined and careful weighing and measuring of your desires, the element of depth and width, as well as of weight, being taken into calculation. There must be a weeding of the desire garden, a cutting away of the dead wood of the tree of desire, a test of strength and vitality between opposing sets of desires, resulting in the survival of the fittest. In that book of this series entitled Desire Power, we have gone into detail and into an extended consideration of this process of the discovery of the dominant desires, to which you are referred if you are especially interested in the subject. The detailed and extended consideration of this special feature cannot be repeated in this book, and is confined to that book dealing with the special subject of desire power. The following condensed synopsis, however, will serve to give you the essence and substance of the general principle involved. 1. The regions of the mind are explored for the purpose of bringing to light the various feelings, emotions, affections, longings, and desires which compose your emotional nature. These, as they are brought into light, are carefully noted on a written list. 2. Then begins the process of elimination as follows. A. The weaker and less insistent desires, and those plainly of a transient, passing nature, are struck from the list, leaving there only the stronger and more permanent ones. B. The list is then again carefully scrutinized. Those desires which stand out by reason of their superior power are retained, and the remainder being eliminated. C. The process is continued along these lines of critical selection until further elimination is deemed inadvisable for fear of cutting away live wood. 3. Then the surviving desires are arranged into classes, and these classes are subjected to competition with each other, the stronger and more permanent being retained, while the weaker and less permanent are discarded. 4. Then the surviving sets of desires are compared carefully for the purpose of discovering antagonism and opposition, i.e., the qualities of contradiction which render coordination and harmonious cooperation impossible, and which tend to pull the will in two opposite directions, and thus to bring it to a standstill or dead center. 5. The opposing and contradictory sets of qualities must be pitted in competition against each other, for one or the other must be discarded from the field of the will. Each must be viewed from every possible mental and emotional angle and subjected to the most rigid tests. The final result will reveal the stronger of each opposing and contradictory sets of qualities, those which have won in the struggle for existence, and which represent the survival of the fittest. The survivors in this process of selection and elimination will represent the strongest and most deeply rooted desires of the individual and will constitute his dominant desires. These dominant desires represent his strongest and most enduring affections based upon his most vigorous, hardy, and sturdy feelings, and rising to the stage of conative will in the form of insistent desire. They represent that which one wants hard enough, wants so insistently as to render him willing to pay the price of its attainment. Energizing ideas. But desire is not the only element involved in deliberative will. In fact, it may be said that every great department of mental activity is involved therein. The presence of ideas and ideals is necessary in the process of deliberation. Action is influenced by representative ideas of objects and things of the outside world. Each clear and strong idea opens a path to possible action and therefore constitutes an element of the deliberative process. Memory and imagination are also called into play with great effect in the processes of deliberative will. Professor Halleck says the greater variety of ideas a man has, the more numerous are the courses of action open to him. If an intelligent physician has an idea of 25 different methods of treating rheumatism, he may vary his treatment accordingly and may succeed where a less skilled doctor would fail. If a businessman has a dozen ideas to fit a given emergency, he may act in any one of these directions. If he has but one idea, he can act but in one direction. Idea must proceed to open a path for intelligent action. Before Columbus sailed, he had an idea of land beyond the seas. Even a plumber must have an idea of how to make a short cut for his pipe before he can do it. The same well-known teacher said, "Deliberation is a process of both intellect and will, of intellect to represent ideas and compare them, and of will to hold the ideas before the attention or to dismiss them and make room for others." In the deliberative process, the whole man makes himself felt. All his past experiences count. In impulsive action, the momentary state triumphs. Let us take a rational human action and see how much deliberation may be involved in it. I wish to leave the city during the heated term. Before I act, I not only have the desire to go, but I must know where to go. I find out the location, the merits, and the defects of a number of summer resorts. Then I proceed to deliberate. A has surf bathing. B is on a mountain and has fine tonic air. C is nearby, and some of my friends are going there, but the mosquitoes are annoying and will not allow one to take a walk with any comfort. D has fine air and no mosquitoes, but the place is too fashionable and too much given to dress. E suits for all reasons save that it is too expensive. F would answer, but it is too far off. I then take into my deliberations the possibility of staying all summer in the city. 3 hot days come. The nights are so warm that one cannot sleep. I then continue my deliberations about the summer resorts. Will is necessarily present in its most important aspect in every act of deliberation. I balance one idea against another. By willpower, I turn my attention undivided upon one idea. Then I dismiss it and turn my attention to another. I consider the surf bathing of A, the mountain air of B, the annoyance at C, the fashion at D, the expense at E, the distance to F. The intellectual faculties are called into play in the processes of deliberative will, in the way pictured in the above illustration concerning the matter of choice of summer resorts. It produces from the region of imagination and memory many facts bearing upon each of the alternative courses of action. It brings up the associated and related facts which add to or detract from the merits of the alternative. It also serves to expose the false nature of some of the alternative courses of action and to add to the validity of others. It acts in the direction of choosing and adapting means to given ends, and it establishes the logical relation of cause and effect between different things. Before one can know what he wants, he must understand the true nature of the alternative wants. He must know the relations and consequences, the associations, and the results of particular courses of action. The person who wishes to know intelligently just what he wants and just what course of general action will bring to him the greatest ultimate content and satisfaction must employ his reasoning faculties in addition to exploring his emotional nature. He must use head as well as heart. He must learn how to observe and examine things, how to obtain correct perceptions, how to form logical judgments, how to use his powers of imagination and memory in the task. As Halleck has said, in the deliberative process, the whole man makes himself felt. The subject of deliberative will blends into and harmonizes with that of determinative will in many particulars. Determination is the final step or stage of deliberation, and at the same time the first step or stage of voluntary action. With this fact in mind, let us now proceed to the consideration of determinative will, to which subject the following section of this book is devoted. Chapter 5. Determinative Will. The stage of determination is the fourth stage of the will process. Determination is defined as follows. 1. The act of terminating or bringing to an end the state of decision. Also, 2. Strength and firmness of mind, firm resolve or resolution and absolute direction to a certain end. The first definition indicates the termination or ending of the process of deliberation, the decision resulting from the process of deliberation. The second definition indicates the beginning of a new process, i.e., the process of impulsion toward voluntary action, and the direction of that impulse. In the following consideration of determinative will, you will see that both of these stages are manifested by will passing through the stage of determination. You must remember here that in studying this subject, you are employing a method which may be stated as finding your definite purposes, and which is represented by the effort to answer the following questions which you have propounded to yourself. For what purpose do I wish to develop and train my willpower and to manifest it in action? In what direction do I wish to apply and employ it when I have acquired it? What is the chief end which I seek to accomplish and to attain through the possession of developed and trained willpower? You have subjected these questions to the test of the deliberative will and are now presenting them to the determinative will for decision and for subsequent positive action upon that decision. The process of deliberation cannot be arrived at the present time in absence of sufficient evidence to warrant an intelligent conclusion. Professor Halleck illustrates the act of decision following his deliberation concerning the summer resort, previously quoted, as follows. With reference to the summer resort, Deliberation does not end the voluntary process. The act of will is yet incomplete. Something more is necessary than 1. A desire to go, and 2. Deliberation about a large number of resorts. My next voluntary step is to choose among the many resorts concerning which I have been deliberating and to decide to go to one. G satisfies my reason, for the place has sailing and fishing, good walks, few mosquitoes, and moderate charges. I then cut short the deliberation and decide to go to G. Decision is a termination of the process of deliberation. The illustration just quoted, however, ends with the performance of the first stage or phase of determinative will, i.e., the stage in which the deliberation is brought to an end and the decision made. Here, the individual says, I have decided to go to G. I shall go to G. He has made up his mind to go to G, but he has not as yet actually set into operation the will machinery of action upon that decision. He must also come to the point in which he can and will truthfully say, I have now the definite purpose of going to G. I intend to go there, and I now begin to exert my willpower to that end. This last represents the second phase or stage of determinative will. In consideration of this particular phase of the activities of the will, we find present the typical examples of the distinction between the strong, healthy will on the one hand and the weak, flabby will on the other hand. The individuals composing the first class make up their minds firmly and positively and then release their impulse and directive powers toward the related will action. The individuals composing the second class, on the contrary, find it most difficult, 1. to make up their minds, 2. to keep their minds made up, and 3. to exert their impulsive and directive powers into manifestation and action. The decision which terminates the process of deliberation is distinctly an act of will, and the sense of voluntary strain and effort is clearly perceptible in the process. Many find decision to be the hardest part of the whole voluntary process. Such persons frequently find it almost impossible to make up their minds, to decide and determine their course of action. They have a decided tendency to allow others to make up their minds for them. Another large class is composed of persons who are in the habit of making up their minds in a flash without due deliberation or exercise of judgment. Such persons frequently find themselves in trouble as the result of their hasty judgments, and often are required to expend considerable time and energy in their endeavors to rectify matters or to escape from the consequences of their ill-considered decisions. The course of the wise person lies in the direction of escaping these two undesirable extremes and in maintaining the golden mean between them. Many persons who recognize in themselves the tendency to waver in making decisions and to escape, so far as possible, the real act of decision and determination have vainly sought the cure for their trouble and in the conventional advice and platitudinous instruction concerning the use of the will in such cases. These persons have felt intuitively that there must be some scientific method based upon sound psychological principles which would enable them to overcome their handicap and serve to establish a new habit of making decisions and determinations. Such intuition is well grounded in fact, for such a method does exist and will accomplish its object. In the following several pages, we shall present it to your attention. In most cases in which it is found difficult to arrive at a decision following the process of deliberation, the trouble will be discovered to lie in the fact that the emotional intellectual value of the conflicting alternatives are too nearly alike to admit of an easy decision. When the full emotional and intellectual value of the alternatives is clearly perceived, then the decision is easy in most cases, for the weight is clearly on one side. In most cases, the choice is made almost automatically. It is axiomatic that the choice between the alternatives is quick and easy in the direct degree that their respective values are clearly and definitely known. In some cases, however, even the process of careful deliberation fails to reveal a preponderance of weight on either side, and the discovery of new attributes has served merely to raise both of the alternative courses to a higher plane of interest, without bestowing upon either a greater proportionate weight. In such cases, the person is like the donkey who starved to death because he was unable to decide between two equally attractive haystacks. It is clear that, if determination is to be reached in such cases, some new element must be introduced. The element of fixed standard. This new element to be introduced into the task of determination is known as the element of fixed standard, to which we shall now direct your attention. We ask you to consider carefully the following method designed to apply the principle of this added element, for it contains the secret of the correction of many weaknesses of the will and the key to the cultivation of prompt, positive, and certain decision and determination. The fundamental and essential principle of the fixed standard is expressed as follows. You must establish in your mind a clearly defined, certain, and positive fixed standard of will values, based upon a general accepted idea of your summum bonum or chief good, with relative degrees of goodness or badness on the scale of will values, said relative degrees being determined by the respective nearness or remoteness to the summum bonum or chief good. This summum bonum or chief good, which constitutes your fixed standard, must be decided upon by yourself. No one else can do the work for you. It must represent your sovereign ideal, your highest conception of general conduct and action, by means of which all special conduct or action is to be measured, weighed, or gauged. The term standard is defined as that which is established by authority as a rule for the measure of quantity, quality, extent, or value, that which is established as a rule or model, a criterion, a test. In the present case, your fixed standard is the accepted test, rule, or measure of will value. Your fixed standard may be modeled upon the character of some great man whom you wish to adopt as a model, or perhaps upon a composite character made up of the approved and esteemed characteristics of a number of such individuals. Or again, it may be the idea of some accepted adage, aphorism, or a rule of conduct which seems to embody your ideal of behavior and action. As, for instance, the touchstone of positivity, frequently referred to in our instruction, which is expressed in the test question, will this make me stronger, better, and more efficient? Or again, it may be some accepted statement of the general principle of ethical conduct and action, as, for instance, the celebrated categorical imperative of Kant, viz., act only on that maxim whereby thou canst at the same time will that it should become a universal law. Or in simpler form, act always so that you might wish your action and conduct to become the standard of the action of and conduct of all persons. Other aphorisms of this kind are, respectively, the Golden Rule, do unto others as you would have others do unto you, or the axiom of Grotius, wrong no man and render unto every man his due. Or again, you may adopt as your standard the maxim, my every action must contribute to my ultimate success. Or the rule that your every action must be in the direction of the betterment of the world or along the lines of some particular ethical, moral, or religious teachings. We have mentioned the above examples and illustrations merely to indicate to you the general principle involved, and not that you must adopt any one of them. You may have some fixed standard of your own which will far better suit your particular purposes. Our purpose here is merely to have you adopt some fixed standard, not any particular one. The touchstone of positivity, so frequently mentioned in this instruction, however, may be adopted by you as a sound, practical basis of conduct and action, for rightly interpreted and understood, it represents a very high ideal of practical philosophy. Its test question, will this make me stronger, better, and more efficient, is based upon the threefold ideal of strength, virtue, and efficiency. Surely not an unworthy ideal, and not contrary to the categorical imperative or to the golden rule, for it could not be objected to as a rule of universal conduct and action, or of justice to others. We offer it as a suggestion, but you are free to reject it in favor of a rule of your own, without impairing in any way whatever the application of the principle or the method now to be explained to you. The adoption of your fixed standard will give you something with which to measure, weigh, or value any and all alternatives of action which are perplexing your determinative will. From it you will build a scale or table of will values, a clearly defined and certain scale with which to measure, weigh, and value the alternative courses of action which are constantly presenting themselves for the decision of determinative will. This scale or table of will values must be established as far as possible before the time of actual choice or decision. It must cover so far as is possible every probable demand upon you for decision, particularly the general principle of choice involved in any special subject likely to come prominently before you. In other words, you must proceed to conduct your deliberation long before the time in which your course of action is likely to arrive, so that when the hour of trial comes, you will have your basis of decision and determination already firmly and positively made, and thus be able to announce it without delay, yet backed by the weight of your previous careful consideration. In this way, you really map out or chart in advance the course over which your will shall proceed on its future journeys, and thus escape the danger of the rocks and reefs which wreck the craft of the mariner lacking such chart. In your table of will values, you must have numerous degrees or grades of values. At the head of your list must appear your top values, certain principles of action of surpassing value to you, and which must always be dominant. These top values must represent conduct and action operating to secure results and consequences strongly in line with your fixed standard. Thus, if you have adopted the touchstone of positivity, your top values will represent actions and conduct which clearly and positively tend to make you stronger, better, and more efficient. Your top values, whatever they may represent, must never be sacrificed. No matter what may be the temptation, any course of action which contradicts or negates your top values must be rejected at once. Your top values must have an almost religious significance. You must be so inspired by them that a suggestion of their violation will cause you to become horrified and indignant. These top values must be regarded as something sacred and to be treated with reverence. At the other extreme of the scale, there must be bottom values, i.e., certain courses of action which must be viewed with loathing and disgust,
and which under no circumstances whatsoever must be followed by you. You must firmly establish these bottom values and must keep away from the courses of action and conduct represented by them. There must be no flirting with them, no compromise with them. They must be regarded always as essentially evil and opposed to your real well-being and to your permanent happiness, satisfaction, and content. These bottom values must be to you what the devil was to the old-time Orthodox Church people. There must be no compromise with Satan. You must always assume the attitude of "get thee behind me, Satan," to these bottom values. In case your fixed standard is the touchstone of positivity, then your bottom values will represent those courses of action and conduct which unquestionably will tend to make you weaker, worse, and less efficient. Between these ever-to-be-sought top values and the ever-to-be-avoided bottom values, there will be a wide range of middle values or neutral values, arranged in their respective places according to their respective degrees of likeness and unlikeness, nearness and remoteness, to the values situated at the two respective poles of the scale. Your judgment will dictate the proper place on the scale for each and every kind of value, and you will find it a very interesting task to place and arrange these possible courses of conduct and action upon your scale. You will do well to use pencil and paper here and actually to construct a black and white scale or diagram of this kind. The main fact to be remembered, the one vital fact upon which the value of the whole system depends, is that the arrangement must be committed to memory so that it may be recalled easily at any time. Each grade, class, or subclass on the scale must have its own definite and particular place so that it may always be found when looked for, and each class must be definitely set off and apart from the one above it and the one below it on the scale. The more definite and positive your classification, the greater the degree of effective availability has your scale. The ideal scale is that one by which you may immediately determine which of any two alternative courses of action possesses the greater will value for you. The nearer to this ideal you can come, the more effective will become your table of will values. A little active use of your imagination at this point will convince you of the wonderful service that a table of this kind will render to you. Think of being able to have a table of will values as all-inclusive and as infallible as is the multiplication table. You will find that it is as great an improvement upon the ordinary hit or miss method as the use of the multiplication table is an improvement upon counting off on your fingers. If you have gone properly about the work of building your table of will values, you will find that in the end, your top values will represent A, your strongest feelings, emotions, affections, and desires, B, subjected to the careful scrutiny, analysis, synthesis, and final judgment of your reasoning faculties, and C, tested by your highest ethical or moral principles and standards. In establishing your table of will values, your physical, mental, moral, and spiritual natures have participated. It represents the essence of your whole nature and character. When you find yourself confronted with two or more perplexing alternatives calling for decision and determination, you have but to apply to each of the alternative courses the following test questions. What place on my table of will values has this proposed course? How closely does it resemble, harmonize with, and conform to my top values? How far is it away from my bottom values? The answer will give the proper value to you of each of the two alternatives, immediately and directly. your decision and determination will speedily follow. Moreover, by this method, the will is trained into the habit of decision and determination along the lines of the highest will values. However, you must remember that your table of will values may be added to, improved, modified, and subjected to the process of evolutionary development as your experience broadens and widens your intellectual, emotional, and moral horizon. The table of will values of the youth, while properly to be employed by him at the time, cannot properly be held to govern the man of matured experience. As with everything else in nature, the law of evolution should govern this table of will values. The system is no rigid, inflexible code which, when once formed and adopted, can never afterward be improved and enlarged. On the contrary, the intelligent, progressive man will see to it that his table of will values keeps pace with his ever-advancing knowledge and experience. But here you should note two very important points of advice and caution concerning proper changes in your table of will values, viz. 1. Never change or modify your scale of will values when under the influence of temptation or upon the suggestion of others interested in your decision, or when under the fire of opposition. 2. While your scale of will values remains unmodified and unimpaired concerning any decision or choice of a course of action, you should live up to it implicitly and positively. It must be strictly adhered to until modified in the proper manner and under the proper circumstances, i.e., free from outside urge or temptation, suggestion, or opposition. The following additional advice concerning these points doubtless will be of assistance to you. 1. As we have said above, your table of will values should never be changed or modified while you are under fire, either of temptation, direct opposition, or the suggestions of others. All your changes, modifications, and evolutionary developments in your table of will values should be made by you when you are apart from and free from the direct influences just referred to. This because when under the direct influence of these psychological forces, your judgment is not always perfectly clear and your emotional nature often is agitated. Here is the rule: the changes and modifications, those amendments to your constitution of will, should be made only under the same or similar circumstances, and with the same care, consideration, deliberation, and subjection to tests, which were involved when you made the decisions leading to the original formation of your table of will values. Your constitution of will, by observing this rule, you will keep your feet on solid rock, and will escape many dangers and unpleasant experiences. 2. Again, we have told you that you should stand by and live up to your existing table of will values at all times. So long as your scale remains unmodified and unimpaired concerning any particular course of action, you should regard it as absolutely binding upon your will and judgment at that time. Any other course would lead you into that state of instability and uncertainty, of indecision and lack of determination, which is the mark of the weak and flabby will. Your table of will values represents the best that is in you, the best in the whole of your nature, at any given time, and consequently, in the long run, it will be found to be by far the safest and the sanest guide to your actions and decisions. It represents you, yourself, in your state of calm and careful knowledge and decision, as contrasted with you, yourself, under the disturbing influences which shake your judgment and disturb the waters of your emotions. It represents the judgment of Philip sober as contrasted with that of Philip drunk. Note this distinction, however.
Though the stubborn, bigoted man stands by his table of will values, he does not let the law of evolution play upon the same. He admits no new ideas, no new viewpoints, no new facts arising from changed circumstances. The man of true firmness and stability of will, however, while likewise standing firmly by his table of will values, nevertheless always is willing and anxious to keep up with the times in his table of values, and he is always working to improve its quality under the proper conditions. While both men stand by their table of will values as they exist at the time on all occasions, there is a difference as wide as the distance between the poles manifested in their respective methods. In one case, the code is petrified and rigid, while in the other it is flexible, alive, and subject to improvement under the proper conditions. The man who really is firm is fixed in purpose, but he is willing to change his position when his purpose is thereby served. The stubborn man, however, is fixed only in position. He sticks to his position even if his purpose is imperiled and destroyed thereby. Note the distinction. The above stated two cautionary rules will be found to work out well in practice in the long run, the few exceptions or apparent exceptions serving principally to emphasize the general rule. There are but very few cases in which these rules will not prove to be the formulae of the wisest and sanest action and conduct. If you have exercised due care in building up your table of will values, the exceptions to these rules will prove to be remarkably small. So small, in fact, that they may be said not to count in the sum total of your experiences. This system, based upon the table of will values, is not merely so arbitrary as it may seem at first glance. Inasmuch as your table of will values has been built carefully, and as carefully passed upon in final decision, it represents the best in your emotional being, your intellectual being, your moral being. This being so, it follows that in living up to these highest reports of your whole being, and in avoiding that which is reported by your whole being as being low and unworthy, you are living up to that which is of the greatest real and permanent value to you. You are being true to yourself and according to good authority. In doing this, you are also being true to all other men, establishing a conscience of will values. If you proceed with proper earnestness and determination in the work of building up and establishing your table of will values based upon your chosen fixed standard, and then proceed to apply the standards of that table honestly and conscientiously, then before long you will find that you have established what may be called a conscience of will values in your subconscious mental being. This new conscience will grow strong and will soon manifest itself as strenuously and as efficiently as does the more familiar ordinary moral conscience, with which all of us are more or less familiar. The newly awakened conscience of will values existing in the subconscious regions of your being will sound the alarm bell when you are in danger of violating the principles of your fixed standard and of failing to observe your top values. It will render you uncomfortable when you are not living up to the requirements of your standards. It will impart the feeling of a warm glow of satisfaction when you comply with the principle. The man in whom this conscience of will values has been awakened is blessed. He will have a something within which will keep his feet on the right path, and which will warn him from straying into the bypaths which beset the road of attainment. And thrice blessed is he who,
having his conscience, acquires the habit of steadfastly heeding its warnings and obeying its orders. This section of this book should be studied in connection with the one immediately preceding it and the one immediately following it, for the three sections are closely related in subject matter, and the instruction in each blends closely with that in the two others. In the present section, we have considered merely the first phase of the determinative will, i.e., the phase of decision or making up your mind. The consideration of the second phase, i.e., the phase of firm resolve or resolution or absolute direction to a certain end, will be carried over to the section immediately following the present one, i.e., the section dealing with voluntary action. The reason for such division of the subject and such blending of the two phases of will action will become more apparent to you as we proceed. Chapter 6. Active Will. The stage of action is the fifth stage of the will process. Here, will manifests in voluntary action, i.e., the process of acting and moving by willpower. This is the final stage of the will process, the stage to which all the preceding stages have been but as preliminaries. In voluntary action, the will manifests its unique character and nature. Toward the end of voluntary action, all the energies of the will have been directed. Willpower essentially is concerned with action. All human actions are caused by will. Whenever emotion rises to motivity and action, that motivity and action is will action. Will is inevitably involved in all doing. The motor element of ideas is obtained from will. Theoretically, it may be said that decision and determination complete the process of will, and indeed, the old psychologists so held and taught. But practical experience, supported by the teaching of the new psychology, insists that decisions and determinations are of little real value unless they proceed into action. The old saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions might well be altered in its phrasing so as to read that the pathway to inferno is paved with non-completed good decisions and aborted resolutions. Many persons are in the habit of thinking that when they decide and resolve to do a thing, then the matter is ended, and they need do nothing else in the matter. It is very easy to sit in a comfortable armchair and resolve that you will do thus and so in the world of action, but it is quite difficult to perform even 1/10 of the deeds which you may thus resolve and decide to do, though many persons do not seem to perceive the distinction and difference between the two processes. As William James has told us, you lie abed on a cold morning and firmly resolve to get up and begin the work of the day. You decide that this is the only rational course to pursue, and you make up your mind to follow it. But often you do not even stir a muscle toward that action. In such cases, it is only when the idea of getting up becomes disturbingly insistent, when your mental alarm clock rings most annoyingly and persistently, that you spring out of bed with a final protesting growl and grumble. The world is filled with persons who are unable to realize that deciding and resolving to do a thing is a far different matter from actually doing it. These persons seldom accomplish any real work of their own volition. All that they do, they are forced to do by others or by the force of circumstances. They are always deciding to do things, resolving to do things, but they never actually do things. Their will processes are seldom completed. The men and women who do the work of the world, who achieve success, who accomplish their ends and aims are those who, having grimly resolved and determined to do a certain thing, then complete the will process by moving into action in the direction of doing the thing in question. But here again we meet with another of those strange paradoxes with which the science of psychology abounds. We have just seen that if you expect to accomplish anything in the world, you must pass beyond the stage of mere decision, resolution, and determination. You must rise to the plane of voluntary action. But on the other hand, we must now inform you that if you expect your voluntary action to amount to anything, to be efficient, to accomplish its purpose, you must carry into your voluntary action a highly developed form of determination. In fact, when closely analyzed, voluntary action is seen to be purposeful determination manifesting its dynamic aspect. The subjective phase of determination is the static aspect of will. Objective voluntary action is the dynamic aspect of will. The two are but twin aspects of the same thing at the last. This fact being perceived, it follows that your effective voluntary action always must be preceded by and accompanied by strong, positive, purposeful determination. Let us here repeat the definition of this term. The term purpose means the view, aim, design, intention, determination, resolution, or will to accomplish or reach some particular object. That which a person sets before himself as the object to be gained or accomplished. The end or aim which one has in view, any plan, measure, or exertion. That which intends to do, hence his intention, design, plan, or project. The term determination in this particular usage is defined as strength or firmness of mind, firm resolve or resolution, an absolute direction to a certain end. From the foregoing definitions, you will have no difficulty in forming a clear and positive concept of purposeful determination. But for the purpose of illustration, we ask you to consider, ponder over, and memorize the following quotations from eminent writers. Each of these has been selected for a special purpose, and to awaken and bring out a certain phase of your willpower. They will help you to fill in the details of your mental picture or general idea of purposeful determination, that essential spirit of will. Buxton says, "The longer I live, the more certain I am that the great difference between men, between the feeble and the powerful, the great and the insignificant, is invincible determination, a purpose once fixed, and then victory or death. That quality will do anything that can be done in this world, and no talents, no circumstances, no opportunities will make a two-legged creature a man without it." Mitchell says, "Resolve is what makes a man manifest, not a puny resolve, not errant purpose, but that strong and indefatigable will which treads down difficulties and danger as a boy treads down the heavy frost lands of winter, which kindles his eye and brain with a pulse beat toward the unattainable. Will makes men giants." Disraeli says, "I have brought myself by long meditation to the conviction that a human being with a settled purpose must accomplish it, and that nothing can resist a will which will stake even existence itself upon its fulfillment." Simpson says, "A passionate desire and an unwearied will can perform impossibilities, or what may seem to be such to the cold and feeble." Foster says, "It is wonderful to note how even the casualties of life seem to bow to a spirit that will not yield to them, and tend to subserve a design which they may, in their apparent tendency, threaten to frustrate. When a firm, decisive spirit is recognized, it is curious to see how the space clears around a man and leaves him room and freedom. Emerson says, "We go forth austere, dedicated, believing in iron links of destiny, and will not turn on our heels to save our lives. A book, a bust, or only the sound of a name shoots a spark through the nerves, and we suddenly believe in will. We cannot hear of personal vigor of any kind, great powers of performances, without fresh resolution. This, then, is the spirit in which you should institute your voluntary actions, leading to the achievement and realization of your prime motives, your top values, your fixed standard, your summum bonum or chief good. You should approach your task in the spirit of the master formula of attainment, which is referred to so frequently in our instruction, and which is as follows: 1. Definite ideals. 2. Insistent desire. 3. Confident expectation. 4. Persistent determination. And 5. Balanced compensation. We ask you to consider carefully the principles of this master formula which you are about to employ in your task of voluntary action leading toward achievement. Consider in detail its elements, as these are presented to you in the following several pages. Ponder them carefully. Commit to memory their essential points. 1. Definite ideals. Before you may proceed intelligently to do a thing, to obtain a thing, or to achieve a thing, it is necessary that you have a clear and definite idea and ideal of that thing. In your consideration of purposeful determination, you must not lose sight of the importance of purpose while you are developing determination. Determination will lose much of its dynamic force if it is scattered or if the purpose directing it lacks definiteness and clearness. Remember that one of the definitions of determination is absolute direction to a certain end, and that purpose means the aim, design, intention, resolution, determination, and will to accomplish or to reach some particular object or end. Note particularly the reference to a certain end and to some particular object or end. The words certain and particular imply definiteness, clearness, preciseness, specificness of meaning, idea, and ideals. They point to the necessity of definite ideals and definite purpose. If definite direction is lacking in your voluntary action, then your purposeful determination has lost one of its strong arms. This first element of the master formula is very important in the case before us. The case of the manifestation of voluntary action and purposeful determination. Before you can really determine to act effectively, you must know the purpose of your action, the end to be attained, or the thing to be obtained, or the direction in which you wish to travel. The more definite and positive your purpose and aim, the greater will be the degree of concentration that you are able to apply to the task. Here you must bring to bear your powers of ideation and visualization. You must learn to map out the land over which you are to travel, to chart the seas over which you wish to sail. You must exercise your constructive ability in designing, planning, mapping out, and making a working diagram of that which you wish to accomplish. You know the general direction by reason of your knowledge of your prime motives, top values, and fixed standard. But probably you have failed to draw your plan in further detail and to fill in all of the minor points. You must correct and overcome this deficiency if it exists in your case. You may find it impossible to draw your plans in very close detail, however. In such case, do the best you can. Draw the general outline as clearly as possible and then fill in the details from time to time as soon as they take form in your constructive imagination. Do the best you can in the creation of a definite purpose. A little practice will enlarge your capacity for work of this kind. You would not expect a builder to erect a house for you unless he were supplied with a working plan by the architect. You would not expect a railroad contractor to build a line or road for you unless he were furnished with the plans of the engineer for such construction. Therefore, you must know positively, clearly, and definitely what you wish to accomplish, the ends and aims to be attained, the direction of your efforts, the particular purpose you wish to work out into achievement, before you can expect to apply effectively your persistent determination. It is not scientific for you to sing, "I don't know where I'm going, but I'm on the way." You must know where you're going, and not only that, you must also know for just what purpose you are going there, and what you are likely to meet with on the road. You must take a lesson from the old story of the architect on the witness stand. He stated that one of his profession was required to plan every building. The opposing lawyer sneeringly asked him, "Pray tell us then, who was the architect of the Tower of Babel?" The architect promptly answered, "There was none, sir, hence the confusion and failure." By reference to the quotations on a preceding page, you will see that the quoted writers have laid special emphasis upon the purpose well fixed, the settled purpose, the design. Disraeli's statement that a human being with a settled purpose must accomplish it gives us the keynote. The purpose must not only be clear and definite, but it also must be a fixed and settled purpose, a purpose adhered to with dogged persistency and determined steadfastness. The more clearly you can see just what you want to do, the better able you will be able to do it, and the more determined you will be to materialize that idealized and visualized purpose. You must not only want to hard enough, but you must also know just what you want, to know it clearly enough and definitely enough. Possessing and manifesting these powers of your mental and emotional being, you are prepared to apply and to exercise your purposeful determination to its utmost capacity and with its full powers. Having discovered your purpose in life, you must proceed to manifest it in voluntary action and to materialize it. The more definite and clear the mental picture, the more definite and positive will be the materialization. 2. Insistent desire. You have become acquainted with the facts concerning the power of desire. You have seen that all willpower is set into operation by desire, and that the degree of manifested willpower is directly proportionate to the degree of the desire back of and under it. This being so, you need no further argument concerning the necessity of manifesting strong, positive desire when you wish to accomplish anything. You realize that the flame of desire is needed to generate the steam of voluntary action. Toward the attainment of the objects or circumstances represented by your top values or prime motives, or the manifestation of your fixed standard, you should ever seek to manifest that insistent, imperious, dominant feeling and desire which will not be denied. This mental state we have repeatedly illustrated by the example of the drowning or suffocating man demanding air, the starving man demanding food, the shipwrecked or desert-lost man demanding water, the wild creature demanding its mate, the mother creature demanding the safety and welfare of its young. This is the spirit of insistent desire in which you should approach your task of voluntary action toward the attainment of your prime motives and top values.
3. Confident expectation. The mental state represented by the term confident expectation is one of positive value to you. Its opposite, i.e., the mental state of fearful doubt, is most harmful to you. Confident expectation tends to release into activity all the powers of your mental being and to fill them with that eagerness for accomplishment, which is based upon confidence and belief in the final successful outcome. Fear and doubt tend to paralyze the will, while faith and hope tend to energize and inspire it. We need not here go into the psychology of this fact. Sufficient for the present purpose is the statement of the fact itself and the reference to common experience to illustrate its operations. If you will consider the cases of the men and women who have accomplished great things in the world, along any of the many lines of human endeavor, you will see that in every case, such individuals have been inspired by the belief in their ultimate success. They have confidently expected a successful outcome. Had they believed otherwise, they would not have had the courage and perseverance which have enabled them to overcome the obstacles in their path and to mount to success upon the stepping stones of their own apparent failures. It is confident expectation, that combination of faith and hope, which enables one to act upon the adage, when you feel that you must let go, then hang on the harder, for victory is near. When we realize the effect of confident expectation upon the will activities, we are almost impelled to agree fully with Tanner in his celebrated statement that to believe firmly is almost tantamount to accomplishment. But whether or not this principle may be carried that far, it is unquestionable that confident expectation is a most powerful and mighty element in successful and effective voluntary action. In this instruction, we have urged the adoption of the slogan, I can, I will, I dare, I do. The I can is based upon confident expectation. The I dare springs from the same inner conviction of ultimate success. In fact, the spirit of confident expectation breathes through and pervades the whole of the slogan and all the processes of the awakened will. 4. Persistent determination. Here we approach the characteristic element of purposeful determination. The very word determination carries with it the idea and thought of persistency. There is present the idea of persistency in all applications of the I can, I will, I dare, I do slogan or maxim. There must always be present not only the determination to do the thing, but also the persistent application of the will to the task. Determination without persistency would be like the play of Hamlet, with the character of Hamlet omitted. In fact, it is difficult to form a concept of practical willpower unless we include the concept of the element of active persistency. The persistent will is the effective will, the real will in action. Whatever else we may conceive effective will to be, we must always conceive it as being persistent. In persistent determination, you manifest willpower not only in voluntary action, but also in the task of steadying and holding to its work the dynamic power of will.
When you have gained complete control of your aroused willpower, you must apply it to its activities, the quality of persistence. This quality you must manifest in steadfastness, firmness, fixed intention, positive direction, and unfailing constancy in continuing the course chosen. You must manifest it by steadfastly pursuing the work undertaken and in holding fast to the general plan designed to govern that work. You must manifest it in perseverance in spite of obstacles and discouragements, and in steadfastness in face of opposition and hindrances. The characteristics of persistent determination are stability, perseverance, fixedness of purpose, tenacity, doggedness, and persistent application. Persistent determination enables you to hold your will close to its task, to hold it there firmly and continuously until success is attained and victory is won. Success in many instances depends upon the application of persistent determination, the manifestation of the power and determination to hold on to the last. Many a man possessing the other qualities of willpower has fought a brave fight, but just before the tide turned in his favor, he has relinquished his efforts and has dropped out of the fight defeated, not by circumstances, but by his own lack of persistent determination. By studying the lives of the great inventors, Morse and Edison, for instance, you will see the utmost importance of this faculty of holding on and this spirit of never say die. 5. Balanced compensation. This element of the master formula finds its familiar expression in the phrase, paying the price. In all attainment, the price must be paid. Compensation is the law of nature, and manifests its force on all planes of existence and in all forms of activity. One who seeks to attain anything must be prepared to pay the price. The price may consist of work performed, of perseverance, persistent application, industry, and diligence, or service rendered to others with whom one has business or similar relations, of ability and willingness to give value received for what he obtains for himself, of the sacrifice and renunciation of ideas, ideals, feelings, desires, aims, and ambitions which are opposed to the subject or object represented by the prime motives and top values. One must be willing to sacrifice the lesser values for the greater ones. All men who achieve and attain anything worthwhile have paid the price in all of the various forms just mentioned. Compensation is a necessity of attainment. There is always a balance struck between what one gets and what he gives or gives up. He who seeks to escape paying the price is defying a great law of nature and of life. It is as if in the cosmos there were maintained a great ledger in which there is both a credit and a debit column on each page. The law is continually striking balances, trial balances, and final settlements. The wise realize this and profit by their knowledge. The fools ignore it and are losers by reason of their folly. Say the gods to men, "What do you want? Take it and pay for it." The spirit of the active will. The following quotations from eminent writers will serve to illustrate the spirit of the active will, particularly in its phase of purposeful determination. You should consider each of the quotations carefully, ponder them earnestly, and commit them to memory. Each one of them has been selected for the purpose of bringing out some particular point or principle, and each and all of them are designed to serve as an inspirational maxim for you in moments of trial, temptation, doubt, or discouragement. They are veritable potions of will tonic. We defy you to repeat them earnestly without feeling the vibrations and thrill of will stirring your soul and awakening the spirit of I can, I will, I dare, I do. Keenan says, in this world, the human spirit, with its dominating force, the will, may be and ought to be superior to all bodily sensations and all accidents of environment. Harriet Beecher Stowe says, when you get into a tight place and everything goes against you until it seems that you cannot hold on for a minute longer, never give up then, for that is just the place and time that the tide will turn. D. Allenbert says, go on, sir, go on. The difficulties you meet with will resolve themselves as you advance. Proceed, and the light will dawn, and shine with increasing clearness on your path. Henry Ward Beecher says, it is defeat that turns bone to flint, and gristle to muscle, and makes men invincible, and formed those heroic natures that are now in ascendancy in the world. Do not be afraid of defeat. You are never so near victory as when defeated in a good cause. Coiler says, it is astonishing how many men lack the power of holding on until they reach the goal. They can make a sudden dash, but they lack grit. They are easily discouraged. They get on as long as everything moves smoothly, but when there is friction, they lose heart. They depend upon stronger personalities for their spirit and strength. They lack independence or originality. They only dare to do what others do. They do not step boldly from the crowd and act fearlessly. Emerson says, I know no such unquestionable badge and ensign of a sovereign mind as that of tenacity of purpose, which through all changes of companions or parties or fortunes changes never, bates no jot of heart or hope, but wearies out opposition and arrives at its port. John Hunter says, is there one whom difficulties dishearten, who bends to the storm? He will do little. Is there one who wills to conquer? That kind of man never fails. Napoleon Bonaparte said, the truest wisdom is a resolute determination. Munger says, a strong, defiant purpose is many-handed and lays hold on whatever is near that can serve it. It has a magnetic power that draws to itself whatever is kindred. Wirt says, the man who is perpetually hesitating which of two things he will do first will do neither. The man who resolves but suffers his resolution to be changed by the first counter-suggestion of a friend who fluctuates from opinion to opinion, from plan to plan, and veers like a weathercock to every point of the compass, with every breath of caprice that blows, can never accomplish anything real or useful. It is only the man who first consults well, then resolves firmly, and then executes his purpose with inflexible perseverance, undismayed by those petty difficulties which daunt a weaker spirit. That man can advance to eminence in any line. Fothergill says, willpower is one of the greatest natural endowments, as it is one of the finest outcomes of self-culture. The man who succeeds in climbing step by step finds his willpower expanding with his energies, with the demands upon him. Strength of will is gameness, the power to stay. Englishmen have always prided themselves upon their game qualities, whether the tenacity of their bulldogs, the endurance of their race horses, the unflinching courage of their game fowls, or their own indomitable purpose. Where there's a will, there's a way. The way may be long hidden from sight, hard to find, long and wearisome, seemingly endless, but on it the traveler goes with unshaken resolution to success at last. In purposeful determination and voluntary action thereupon, the will deliberately chooses an end or object to be attained, and then proceeds to manifest the determination in outward form and action. It proceeds to its end with intensity of purpose and directness of aim. The end must be clear, definite, and capable of distinct visualization. The effort to gain that end must call into operation the whole nature of the will and the whole force and energy of the willpower. As it has well been said, the whole living strength of the will must be literally hurled into it, not once or twice, but again and again, until it is accomplished. The purposeful determination must be real. It must be meant by you with the full power of your soul. You must not trifle with such resolutions. You must be in deadly earnest about them. Remember that the honor and integrity of your will is at stake, and that you must not bring discredit upon it. To break such a resolution is to bring shame upon yourself and to your will. You will do well to remember and to follow the advice given by a religious writer on the subject, who bids his pupils to proceed to will by first making the following statement. Yes, before God, I mean that. I mean it as intensely and really as I can ever mean anything. I will keep that resolution. I know that I can and will keep it because I mean it. Further, I will take every precaution to keep it alive and vigorous within me by making it again and again. This is the essence and spirit of purposeful determination. Strive ever to attain, sustain, and manifest it. This is the flash of the will that can.